Hello, welcome to our ASCM Inland Empire webinar series. I'm excited to be here today with Ed Knab, and we're going to be talking about tariffs. What fun, what fun, what fun, huh? And also we'll be talking a bit about free trade zones and how that relates to tariffs. So we will let's start off by introducing our speakers today. And I am Lisa Anderson, president of LMA Consulting Group, and also president of ASCM Inland Empire chapter. During my day job, I work with manufacturers and help them improve their performance to their customers and to the bottom line. And I would like Ed and I have known each other for many years. I'm excited that he could be here today with us because he's really on top of this type of topic. So Ed became acquainted with global trade early in his career as owner of Warehouse Logic, which purchased a 17 million square foot warehouse, or 17,000 square foot warehouse in Michigan. And his warehouse space was designated as a foreign trade zone. So who better to talk about the benefits of foreign trade zones today? And it quickly filled up with high tariff products in footwear, automotive, hardware, industrial automation industries. So very applicable to today. But Ed is much more than that. He's had a strong global perspective, and he's worked with established international manufacturing capacities in 400 factories across 10 countries in the Pacific Rim. He is known as a logistics and supply chain expert and consultant. And, Ed, we could just go on and on about Ed, but I'm thrilled to have him here today to talk with us about tariffs. So welcome, Ed.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lisa. Yes, I've been involved in this for many, many years. I'm currently retired and happily retired, but I do keep up with current events, and I've got to say that the amount of uncertainty in the environment where you all are dealing and working every day is absolutely incredible. So I give it to all of you for dealing in such a complex and challenging environment. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, both tariffs and maybe the way that foreign trade zones can help or become part of a strategy as one tool to use in that kind of an environment. So nice to meet you all. And Lisa, I'll go back to you.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you. And we're glad that we could pull you out of retirement and the pickleball court to to join us today. All right, so we'll bring up. We have some slides so that you can have something to look at in addition to us. Let me see where to go. All right, so are you guys able to see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. All right, excellent. All right, so, oops, went too far. Okay, so this is actually, we're going to get us started here by talking about the background. Like, how did we get to this point in time? And, where were we when these tariffs started going into effect? So I think pretty much everything is said if you look at the right-hand side and the graph here. But China's global manufacturing went from small to dominating, whereas the U.S. has unfortunately continuously gone down in terms of its share of global manufacturing. So let's go back to the pandemic, and supply chain resiliency is top of the list. So the pandemic highlighted to us that it is no longer acceptable to think that things will just continue to be as they are. It's pretty much what companies got into somewhat by default because, pretty much it just carried on as normal. But the pandemic proved that you have to be really careful about who is in your end-to-end supply chain and how you can meet surges in demand and key disruptions. So it's one thing that is behind this tariff situation. The manufacturing capability of critical items is really the biggest push behind all of this. However, it wouldn't have come up, I don't think, without the pandemic pushing it to the forefront. So the U.S. manufacturing capability has steadily declined since China entered the WTO. I mean, really, it's extremely hard to compete if you don't have to follow any sort of guidelines or rules in the process. So we've lost the ability largely to produce things like pharmaceuticals, which is obviously quite important, defense, computer chips, infrastructure, and related to end-to-end supply chains. So that's why you hear a lot of things about steel, critical minerals, copper, those types of products. The economic impact is interesting. And that's why probably a lot of us are here today. I mean, why we've gotten involved in manufacturing, but it really can have a big difference. So for every dollar invested in manufacturing, $2.67 is added to the economy. And this was old numbers, so I'm sure it's gotten higher. But even with these numbers, it explains why a 1-for-1 equation, which is what we've been moving towards, is not nearly as good as a one, where we can almost triple our investments in our economy with every dollar invested into manufacturing. So looking at it the other way, is it no wonder that companies or countries like China wanted to manufacture for the world? And then the rules of the game, as I somewhat alluded to, it's, there's just no way in the world to really compete if you don't have to, if you're competing with someone that doesn't have to follow US labor laws, financial laws, environmental laws, or any of the above, it's going to be a challenge. We've actually highlighted a few companies that have done so successfully, utilizing great strategies like lean and forward thinking, SIOP programs, etc. However, it really is just not simple to do, and you had to have other benefits working in your favor. So that's the background for tariffs. So what happened? And so we'll go through some slides of where we stand, and then we're going to go into what do we do about all this. And if you have questions or comments, please, put them in the chat, and we'll bring them into the discussion. So the Mexico-Canada piece started this tariff scenario with a 10% tariff that went into effect to discourage, what was going on with the border and like the drug war, if you will. That's still in effect today. And we've been talking about trade deals with Mexico and Canada, but it's not related to the USMCA type products, except for this 10% tariff, and then there'll be some other exclusions here that we'll get to for like steel and aluminum. So that's what's going on with Mexico. China was like definitely a hot topic in the news. There was a 20% tariff that went into effect for China related to drug precursors, which you may or may not know, but actually most of the fentanyl that comes through Mexico comes from China. So that's where it started. But then there was a escalation to a crazy, ridiculous tariff of 145%. And then it's come down now to 30%, given where we started off, at least this year. So 30% tariff is in place with China. And there is a 80-20 of a framework that's been established, but it's still under discussion, and further tariffs are on hold for I forget how long. Maybe I don't remember. Maybe if you know, Ed, you can tell us.
I think at least 60 days. It'll be before we get to an agreement with China.
Yeah, I agree. Something like that, and things do move out. So long as both sides hold to their end of the bargain, which was one of the issues that came up here, is that China cut off the world, not just the US, in critical minerals, which are required to produce everything from medical devices to defense. And they've started back up. And that's partly why these tariffs have de-escalated. They've started shipping those critical minerals again. And there's lots of other details. Steel and aluminum are considered critical items. And so first a 25% tariff went into effect, and then that wasn't deemed enough to spur on the appropriate steel and aluminum production. And so it's up to 50% currently, so that we can ensure that it's a catch-22, because certainly it's used in a lot of products, which is exactly why the tariff went into effect, which is causing a lot of chaos, concern, stress, and higher prices in some cases. On the other hand, as production goes up again, steel and aluminum by all means will add more than the dollar invested, and much more importantly than that, from an economic standpoint, is really just simply having access to the amount of steel and aluminum you need to make all those items that we discussed. Car tariffs went into effect of 25%. Really, that was, well, I say this as you can't defend yourself if you don't think about the end-to-end supply chain, and like a tire as an example. It's rather important to a lot of things, not just cars. But in addition, cars were a key campaign issue. So that's more, there's additional reasons that cars went on to tariffs. But nevertheless, a 25% tariff is in effect for foreign-made cars. So if the company is producing in the US, that's going to be excluded from the tariff. And then there's also reciprocal tariffs that are still being negotiated right now. Right now, they're on pause until August 7th, with some trade deals still in the works. And the next slide, I'm going to talk about some of the trade deals that have already taken effect.
Lisa, I could just add here that based on the first slide and this current slide, that it's really important that we as a country identify those strategic industries that we deem critical, and make sure that our investment strategy supports those first. Automobiles is really a good example. Automobiles are mostly global products, and components come from everywhere. This tariff affects the components that go into even a Ford truck. If they come from another country, they're going to receive a tariff, those components. And so it makes a big difference how we think about overall components and overall products. So we have to have a bigger global picture in order to make sure that we're building the industries that we really feel are strategic to the future.
Exactly. You're exactly right. And a note about the cars. Ford is actually the company that produces the most cars in the US, but they still, obviously, they all use parts from other places. To Ed's point, which of these parts are strategic and which aren't? I think, at this point, it doesn't matter, because there was too many loopholes that were established when they went that direction. So nevertheless, there's I think the car companies asked for additional time before tariffs ramped up. So there's like a lot of different rules here, but like Ed said, generally speaking, you need to be producing. If you think about it, when you're producing your car, you better have like all of the key capabilities produced like, or capable of being produced in-house or in country, if you will. So thank you, Ed.
It's not enough any longer just to assemble cars here. We need now to assemble cars with American content.
Yep, exactly. So these are the deal frameworks, and I thought what that means is like to make a trade deal, it's like it could take years. There's like lots of nuances and details. So frameworks are what's been established to mitigate the effects, which basically means the countries have agreed to these frameworks, and then they'll work through the deals or they'll work through the details, I should say. And if for some reason the details go off track, like obviously the tariffs would come back into effect. So anyway, frameworks have already been negotiated with some really large blocks of countries that are, I think I heard the other day, it's about 55%, maybe higher, of global demand. So the UK, EU, Japan, Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, Cambodia. You can read here. But basically, there's a lot of places and several strategic countries. There's also somewhat close to a framework with China, but it's not at that point yet. So the first deal that was established was with the UK. And the reason I'm highlighting that is that because they were first, well, at least that's what I'm thinking, because they were first, they seemed to got the best deal. So they got 10%, a 10% baseline tariff rate. And they did open access. You'll see, I'll go through this one at a time, but EU, Japan, and South Korea are around 15%, and the remainder currently are 19 to 20%. Overall, the estimates are that the tariffs are about 18% overall. The US has gained market access. This was a big piece of the equation. And going into this, obviously, companies were trading with the US, or countries were trading with the US, and companies were trading because we had such a large trade deficit. So we buy from other places, but that same market access was not happening in reverse. So some of the key elements of these trade deals is that we now have market access, whether they buy it or not, that's up to companies, but at least we don't have additional trade barriers for key industries, really, our agriculture, aerospace, military, energy, those types of things. In addition, so like, for example, a big number here is $750 billion is what the EU committed to buying in terms of energy, which is good because right now they buy a lot from Russia, which obviously there are problems with that between the Russia-Ukraine war. There's the geopolitics get really wrapped up into all of this global trade. So the investment commitments is another key element. So I'm just trying to bring up the key elements, and Ed can add to this and or revise anything because things do change, momentarily here. But the investment commitments are like Japan has agreed to $500 to $550 billion. That's earmarked for, we're able to choose really where that goes, but it's for critical industries, such as critical minerals, like some of the areas that Japan has expertise in, that type of thing. EU has committed to 600 billion. It's from companies, so that'll be depending upon what the companies want. But I know that pharmaceutical companies is an example. And then South Korea has also committed to 350 billion, with a large portion of that being shipbuilding, which is fabulous. I think we have gone from being leaders in shipbuilding to being, well, last place, really, or it's non-existent. I don't know that we're last place, but it's largely non-existent, which is not a good thing. And so South Korea does have some expertise in that area, and they're investing in shipbuilding capabilities in the US, which is fabulous, I think. And then we also have, it's also focused, these deals, on manufacturing, which should make everybody on this call happy, critical minerals, mining, shipbuilding, energy, basically all of the areas that we all focus on, and supply chain brings it all together. It's an umbrella topic, if you will. Do you have anything to add to that, Ed? And then we can talk about this de minimis.
Well, these investments are huge. And one critical step is to make sure that these investments are in our key industries and able to be developed as soon as possible. I think that's really part of this whole transition period. So the better we are at identifying where these investments go and how we invest in these will create a ton of opportunity for all sorts of companies within the United States. And so it's important for companies to think about what industries do we want to be in that are critical, that will be able to partake in these investment strategies and allow us to continue to grow at very, very rapid rates. Because this is you've just listed with three groups, over $1.5 trillion of investment into the US. So the sooner we can get that money working for us and creating jobs in critical industries, the better off we're going to be.
Completely agree. And I guess from that point of view, the other happy note, if you're in manufacturing and supply chain, is that there has also been, I don't know the number right now, but somewhere between $7 and $10 trillion of investments announced that are, I guess you could say, in addition to this. A few of them, like, I don't know, we could debate it, but basically somewhere between $7 and $10 trillion. And that's like data centers, artificial intelligence, which is going to go back to some of this mining, pharmaceuticals, etc. So there's a lot of, like Ed said, we have to find a way to bring it to fruition sooner the better. And it will stimulate, I think that there's going to be such a boom coming in manufacturing that we, the best people and the best companies are going to have more opportunities than they've ever had in their history. And the companies that are, waiting for everything to work out before they do anything and are anti-risk, anti-investments are liable to be bought up and or go away. So I think there'll be a significant change and evolution over the next few years.
That's a really good point, Lisa. Investing in your people and investing in the strategic resources that you need to grow your business, giving these investments is really going to be critical. And those people that step out first are going to have the first opportunities. So it's like, don't wait, move quickly, but strategically. And I think you'll find a lot of success in your future.
Agreed. None of us are advocating here for, throwing money out the window or anything, but you do need to be, it's going to be time for like easy leadership. Not that it was ever easy exactly, but easy leadership is done. It's no longer going to be like a thing. In the future, we're going to have to be, on our feet, looking forward, investing smart, in a wise fashion and willing to take a little risk as well as be bold. So it's going to be a whole new day.
And the key is going to really be having the people that can do that within your overall organization. So developing people, getting familiar with AI, seeing where it can help you and where it can't is really going to be critical to taking advantage of all of these investments in the US.
Agreed. So that's the 80-20 really, is the trade deal frameworks and like some of the key aspects. But I did want to highlight, because we are in supply chain and logistics here as well, is the de minimis exemption. Now, what does this really mean? Well, there was these small value packages that pretty much avoided tariffs. And, at the time there was like, I can't remember the number, but it was small. There was a small number of these and they got an exception. However, as would be true for any loophole, like it shot up by like, I don't know, 1,000,000 to 1, because now everybody was sending small packages to take advantage of no tariffs, Because like, as Ed and I were discussing before this webinar, companies are, if nothing else, smart. They're going to take advantage of whatever opportunities come their way. So this was one. And it also, unfortunately, at times, it also related back to the fentanyl issue because it could come in a small package. So that loophole has been plugged. And it's gone into effect for China, but it's going to be phased in for the rest of the countries by August 29th. So that means, though, that there's some like Chinese e-commerce companies that, are going to struggle because they, aren't going to be able to provide the low prices they used to be able to provide. On the other hand, like somebody like Amazon, you can go to and you'll get the best price, if you will, but it's not going to be excluding tariffs anymore. And
Yeah,
I don't know, since it relates to logistics, do you have anything else to add about that?
well, these were companies that really focused almost exclusively on really cheap consumer goods. And they flooded the market with those. They were goods that nobody could compete with, shoes for $15, those kind of things. And, in order to make the tariffs work, we have to make sure that they encompass everything and that they're fair and that they're applied evenly across the global network. So I think that would be all I could add there. These are going to be closed, and I think they're mostly closed right now.
True. Let's see. All right. Can you keep going to start this one,
Yes.
Ed, and I'll be right there. Oh, thank you.
So here we go. The tariff rates are going to be with us for a long period of time. Right now, the average is about 18% overall. And I think it'll increase because some of the countries that were buying lower quantities of material will actually end up with higher tariff rates. So critical items, we've talked about that, supporting defense, pharmaceuticals, infrastructure, rare earth minerals, all of those are really critical that we jump on those industries as fast as possible. And I think you'll see most of the early investment dollars go into those things. So when you're thinking about your supply chain, you should be thinking about those critical industries and what part you could play in their growth. Also, the access to markets. As the world grows and as these countries are open to more American goods, it's really going to be a boom for those companies that can go and develop foreign markets for their products. And that's going to make a big difference in agriculture, aerospace, energy, any of those areas. Will be great investments and good places where we can sell goods to other countries and make a good profit. So all of these.
Thank you, Ed. Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. But thank you for
all of these tools are negotiated, and I think we're making fairer deals around the world and around the countries right now. There's no doubt that all of you are working in, the biggest environment of uncertainty that there's ever been. So I applaud all of you for your flexibility and ability to react on a daily basis to changes that impact your business significantly, and how you adjust to those now and in the future will really be a key to success. So inflation or deflation, I think both of those are part of our new environment. And Lisa, you could take this one.
Yep, I can take it from here. Thank you though for jumping in there. I completely agree with what Ed was just saying, and I think we have a lot to go through, so I don't want to like harp on it, but like from a forecasting point of view, uh, I've been saying since the beginning, I think that tariffs could be mildly inflationary. I still think that's the case. Of course, people are quite distraught and concerned, depending upon what specific company you work with and or industry, because depends on who your customers are, who your suppliers are, how you're set up, and certain products are going to have increases in cost to be sure, and other ones are going to go down in cost. Uh, so basically, it will just depend. But overall, I think inflation will be mildly inflation, or I should say, it'll be mildly inflationary. It appears so far that from a China point of view, which is like the 80-20, they're absorbing 60% of the tariffs anyway so far. So most of this is not going to be passed on to consumers. Some of it will. It depends, of course, again, by company and, what's going on. But nevertheless, that's what it looks like overall. And actually, in some cases, these cost increases are being largely offset with the price of energy coming down as we bring energy supply online, deregulations, and then tax cuts. So overall, I think it's going to be, if at best mildly inflationary, it could just be the same. So nevertheless, that's the forecast. We'll see. We'll continue to see how accurate it is. From a shortage point of view, everyone was really panicked in the beginning about shortages. We're not seeing that happen. Again, depending upon what company, like if you worked with a company completely dependent on the de minimis exemption, sure, the company could go out of business. So therefore, you would be short if you wanted that particular product or that particular brand. If you're willing to take substitute products from a consumer standpoint, and or hopefully if you're a business and you have backup sources of supply and you're dual sourced with and transitioning production to reliable countries, including certainly the US, you're not going to be short. As companies reallocate production among their plants, if they have multiple plants, what we're finding is that lead times are extended in some cases as they're reallocating production, but they'll work that out quickly. And I don't see any massive shortages like happened during the pandemic.
I would agree with that, Lisa.
Oh,
And
good. I was going to ask.
I would just say that we can almost expect 3 to 5% inflation for the next several years. And I think that'll be the extent of it as we continue to develop our own supply chains and develop our own manufacturing processes. That should come down. And so it should give us some diminishing returns. But in the short term, we should prepare and plan on that kind of inflation.
Well, that's good. So I'm glad. I feel even better now since you agree with my analysis. Since 2% for everybody on the webinar, 2% is seen as like what you want in quotes.
Yes.
From inflation standpoint. So 3 to 5 is mildly inflationary. So, well, very good. Well, thank you, Ed, for that. Now, since we're related to logistics, and I see some of you have asked questions, so I'll look at those in just a second here, but I wanted to throw this out there because if you're related to the logistics industry, they particularly are very stressed, I guess you could say. That's for sure. I remember one of my board members who I see on the call, Tony, and I went to a couple of supply chain events, and they were definitely stressed, to say the least, when the tariffs went into effect. Now, I guess the bad news is that logistics the good news and bad news is that logistics will level out because logistics, after all, is going to follow the product. You still need goods to move from place to place. The bad news, though, is that in California in particular, I see that it will negatively impact the area unless we decide to automate, get into the future as far as where, like be competitive with other places, then I see California will be fine. I don't necessarily have a lot of hope that we're going to do that, but if they will do that, they'll be fine. But if not, they won't. And why is that? It's because as China declines, and I do believe that we're going to move, we'll move and reshore some of the manufacturing in China. Reshoring doesn't exactly work the way it sounds. It's not like you shut down in China and you start up somewhere else and you consider reshoring. What you really do is you're going to expand on manufacturing and you're going to invest in the US. And then slowly you will ramp down what you're doing in China. That's what really happens. But as that happens, and it's not just the US, I think it'll also move to nearshoring, like places like Mexico that we have like the USMCA agreement with, that we can count on, those types of places. So as China declines, though, the routes will change. And China comes to the Southern California ports in order to ship it to the East Coast of the US. And they will no longer need to do that if we go to, like, let's say, the Latin America, Mexico. You don't even necessarily have to come by water from Mexico for sure. India, which I don't know. They're sort of like in flux right now, but it's a thought of as a future leader in manufacturing. On the other hand, there are trade issues going on with India right now. So nevertheless, if it moves away from China, it's likely to impact Southern California significantly. And Southern California is very dependent on this type of volume. So one would hope that we will become more competitive and allow for some automation and advanced technologies. And if so, things will level out, because what happens in business is that people will follow the optimized route of whatever is going on, and they will look for the most cost effective and optimized route. So that's basically what this is saying. Ed, do you have anything to add to that? Because I know you're
I
like an
do.
expert
Well,
in
Lisa,
ports.
that's a really good point. The ports here in Southern California have been extremely inefficient, and they've been very resistant to automation and to change. When you go visit the ports in China and actually see the level of automation that they have and the technology that they have, it dwarfs what we're doing here. And in order to keep California competitive, we need some significant improvement in the operations of our ports. We can't do it the old way of unloading one container at a time or follow the model that we've been following. We really need to get much more efficient in our handling of goods and getting goods to the final destination. And I think that'll be a key for everybody here in California. We really need to put pressure on the port to change significantly as quickly as they can.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree, Ed. All right, so let's see. So now we'll go into some proactive strategies that you can use to address tariffs. And what I'll say to set this up is part of what happened this time as the Trump administration rolled out tariffs is they closed many loopholes that existed in the last time, that they found out, people will find the best, whatever's the least cost way to do something. And if those loopholes exist, they'll find a way to make them happen, right? So they've addressed a lot of loopholes. So it comes down to some things that we should have been doing anyway, all along. And we're going to go through those shortly, but first we'll talk about foreign trade zones and how that relates to tariffs and what's changed about it. So Ed, do you want to go through this and then we'll carry on?
I'll run through these relatively quickly, but foreign trade zones are an element that can be used to defer some of the costs associated with bringing foreign product into this country. And as Lisa has said, some of the opportunities or the loopholes have been closed already. that affect these, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But foreign trade zones are designated areas within the United States considered outside U.S. customs territory. I think the last time I checked, there's about 350 different foreign trade zones around the country. And some of those are quite flexible. They can be extended into your own space, your own warehouse. They can be extended into third-party warehouses. So it's fairly flexible, and it can be used to defer some of the tariff payments that will come due once you receive foreign goods. It allows businesses to defer, reduce, or eliminate customs duties. Overseen by the Foreign Trade Zone Board. So this has been in existence for many, many years, over 75 years. And it is a tool that was designed to spur investment here in the US and provide a way for us to get foreign goods and defer some of the costs associated with them. One of the big benefits is if you're receiving goods that end up being exported, there are some deferral advantages that may be able to spur your business. So duty deferral benefits, FTZs allow businesses to defer tariff payments, enhancing cash flow and reducing upfront costs. So when the goods come in, the duty rate actually, because they closed some of the loopholes, the duty rate will be defined when the goods are received. But it isn't due until they leave the foreign trade zone. So physically, once they leave the foreign trade zone, that tariff is due and payment is due immediately. So immediate entry without tariffs, goods can enter the FTZ, providing financial flexibility and better cash flow for customers using the foreign trade zone. The importance of foreign trade zones, tariff mitigation. FTZs enable businesses to defer, reduce, or eliminate customs duties, mitigating the impact of high tariffs. It used to be, I looked at a chart comparing tariff rates from 2023, which averaged about 3.5% overall, to tariff rates today, which are right now averaging somewhere north of 15%. So you could see there's going to be a significant increase in tariffs. But by lowering cost, FTZs enhance the competitiveness of U.S. businesses, allowing them to operate more efficiently and to use their money more efficiently. FTZs also attract foreign payments, foreign investment. I had customers that would store foreign goods in my foreign trade zone at their cost, at their expense, rather than at my expense. But they wanted to keep those goods available to American manufacturers that were adjacent to the foreign trade zone, so that they could benefit from the quick turnover. So there are a lot of things that can be negotiated with your trading partners by utilizing a foreign trade zone. FTZs also provide operating flexibility and allow businesses to adapt quickly to a changing market and also changing conditions.
Very good. All right.
So the financial benefits, duty deferral, we know what that looks like. Just not paying the tariff today, but paying it when the goods leave the foreign trade zone is important. If you look at what foreign trade zones charge as opposed to what normal warehousing charges are, the upcharge for a foreign trade zone is generally in the 10 to 15% range. You may pay 10% or 15% more to keep your goods in a foreign trade zone, but that can be offset by, deferring the duty payment or the tariff payment from those. Some of the goods, duties can be paid if the goods are imported into a foreign trade zone and then exported to another country. Some of that duty elimination has been already closed by the current administration. Also, inverted tariff relief, where you are able to bring products into your foreign trade zone at one duty rate and export them at a lower rate. Some of those have already been closed as well. So I think the main function of a foreign trade zone is to be used as a tool for manufacturers and your trading partners to see if they can position their goods closer to where manufacturing needs them to be. And that, I think, is going to be the main benefit of foreign trade zones as we move into this changing future of ours.
Very good. All right.
Let's see. So the operational advantages, streamlined customs processing. The one thing that foreign trade zones do a very good job of is managing material within the confines of the distribution center. Improved inventory control. They have very strict requirements for inventory control, and you can count on those, take them to the bank. Enhanced quality control. Goods can come in, they can be inspected and or rejected without ever paying the duty on them. If the goods don't meet your standards, they can be sent back from the foreign trade zone and you'd never paid the duty on them. Extended storage options. I mentioned that already, but negotiating who pays the storage for the goods in the foreign trade zone is very important for your trading partners. And I think in a lot of cases, you can convince the trading partners that it's a good investment for them to keep their goods within, a week or 10 days of where manufacturing will need them. So it's not necessarily a cost that you have to bear yourself.
Very true.
Okay. As we're wrapping this up, I'm trying to move a little faster. So if there's any specific questions, let me know. But boosting supply chain efficiency, streamlined supply chain operations are going to be critical. Knowing exactly where all the inventory is at every point in time is one of the strengths of utilizing a foreign trade zone. Reducing transportation costs. I could see that sharing the information in supply chains is going to become more and more critical and more and more benefit to different kinds of manufacturing companies. And faster processing times. I think we've got to cut down the amount of inventory that we keep in our manufacturing plants, and just-in-time inventory, it really needs to come to its next level, so that really tomorrow's production is arriving today, and reducing the cost and also reducing the congestion in our manufacturing plants. Quota avoidance wherever possible. We have quotas on many items. You can keep your goods in a foreign trade zone. When the new year or the new quarter turns over and the quota opens up, you can release those goods. It also helps in goods that are seasonal. So you might have lawn and garden, and you might put those goods into a foreign trade zone until you're ready to use them or distribute them. And then you can pull them out and distribute them when the season is right. Also, Christmas goods fall into that category. That's
a good point.
Yeah, actually. And faster speed to market will be the key to everything. So I think that's the really
Yeah.
interesting world that we're moving into.
So Ed, I think to summarize this page, I think that, tell me if I'm right, but there's a lot of benefits of a foreign trade zone. The key one that's still in effect because part of the trade, the tariff executive orders that went into effect has eliminated loopholes, including some folks trying to use foreign trade zones to get around them. But what you could still use it for, and we're testing my understanding now, but is that if you put your goods in a foreign trade zone, then you don't have to pay the tariffs until they come out of there. So basically, like the last example you provided, like if you had a seasonal inventory and you had to store a whole bunch of goods up front, it could save, I mean, there's no reason to pay all that money up front. It's, poor cash flow management, if you will. And so that could be a good use of a foreign trade zone. It's more about making the timing happen that's best for you, of course, while satisfying customers. Is that an accurate statement?
I think that it is. I think the two major benefits are deferring the payment and talking to your trading partners about having them assume part of the payment and the cost of storage for their units in your manufacturing process. And I
That
think
makes sense.
they'll be receptive to that, and that'll allow you to not pay these significant tariffs until the goods are ready to be used. So the more we can compress time and the faster we can be in the manufacturing efforts, the more efficient we're going to be as manufacturers.
Makes sense. No, makes sense. Thank you. And there are, I think, is it okay to skip by these and go to
Sure.
okay. All right. Well, so before we go here, because I'm gonna, go through quickly if we'll stay like 5 minutes over here to go through some of these quickly. But I wanted to answer a few questions and Ed can like help me out here. But Tony, I know you asked about USMCA. Yes, it is still in effect. It's the goods that don't relate to USMCA that there's negotiations over currently. And in addition to that, though, steel and aluminum and cars
Are
are
exempt.
considered are considered critical exemptions because of I don't know, competitiveness, or I forgot, what terms to actually use. But is that an accurate statement, Ed?
I think it
My
is. I think the MC agreement is still in effect, and other than the items that have been exempt, which you mentioned, uh, everything else is still applicable to both Mexico and Canada.
They're just trying to get like a better deal when it comes to like steel, aluminum. Like for example, the UK did work out a different deal with cars than other countries, but they did something. They invested actually, one of the things they did, but they invested in their forget what the name of the car brand is, but anyway, it's also an aerospace company, and they invested money into the US to produce here, and so they got a better deal on the other side of the equation. So that's what that's about. But Tony, yes, USMCA pretty much covers all of the trade. It's just that there's the exemptions of steel, copper, aluminum, and cars and car parts, I guess, is really the main things. And let's see here. Elizabeth was saying that they're resistant to automation at the port she's talking about because of the ILWU. Well, yes, the union is the key folks there that are resistant. She doesn't think that's going to change soon. I don't think so either, Elizabeth, which is my concern, because I think that companies will go to the lowest competitive source, which may not be Southern California for volumes that's for the East Coast. And then Elizabeth said pressure on the ports won't make much of a difference here. Well, unfortunately, I agree with you. So the unions as well as the ports are pretty ingrained. So that is, I think, I think that is the concern. So I do think logistics does have a big impact on Southern California. I think it's one of our prior webinar speakers, David Porter, said that it's, I think, 1 in 9 jobs or 1 in 11 jobs. I don't remember which, but basically it's a lot of jobs that relate to the ports. So anyway, so that's
The ports today are run the same way they were almost 75 years ago, and they haven't picked up the efficiencies that are all over the world. And I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure because this union dominance that we have at our ports has really got to go if California is going to play a major role in growing in the future. This is a bottleneck, and it's absolutely what we're doing is not working.
Yeah, understood. And I think there's a lot of what I can definitely say, because I did some research on the ports, is that China is like night and day difference when it comes to automation. And I do know, I mean, I guess the positive point of view here, Ed, is that there is I can't remember, it's a separate terminal or separate area. I don't remember what it's called actually, but where they did like a pilot, if you will, of automation and more advanced technologies. And that has gone well, but there still is union resistance to moving it further, which is what we're talking about. So anyway, it's definitely a contentious topic, to be sure. And now Tony asked a question about free trade zones, which we just wrapped up. So Tony, I think I know the answer, but Tony asked, do we have local free trades or foreign trade zones? And I think the answer is yes, but I don't know for sure. Do you know, Ed?
Yes, there are a number of foreign trade zones. There are also a number of companies that have extended that foreign trade zone into their own warehousing and distribution network. So there are ways to extend the foreign trade zone right into your own factories, right into your own storage warehouses, as opposed to having them in other locations. So those are all things that companies need to look into and examine what the trade-offs are of doing that.
Agreed. And I've sat in on some presentations about them. There can be some good advantages, and I think there's several in like San Bernardino County, but there's other ones as well. So now, what are some additional strategies? I'll go through these relatively quickly, and we can always have another webinar just on these, because these are just really, to me, things we should all be doing regardless of tariffs, really. But nevertheless, they are going to help you with tariffs as well, because I guess the good news and the bad news is that a lot of the loopholes have really been closed, so there's no like magic bullets here. Foreign trade zones were smart regardless, as Ed has said. He used to own one. And now supply chain visibility is becoming a hot topic, and by all means, who doesn't want to know better where their product really is in the supply chain, and who's even in their end-to-end supply chain? You really have to know now, because you might be charged a tariff for somebody you didn't even know you were dependent upon, which is not a good sign, obviously, because we should know. But like I said, we got so accustomed to relying upon and focusing our attention on our first supplier out that we haven't really spent much attention on, the second, third, fourth, and fifth in line here. So supply chain visibility, knowing what your exposure is and where your risks lie and what you should be doing. You should be doing this regardless of tariffs. Tariffs just adds another element into the equation. You should always have a backup source of supply. I always give this example of when I was vice president of operations and supply chain, and I had it's an interesting phenomenon, but I had an old school yet progressive director of purchasing that worked for me, and he was actually turned out to be brilliant. He basically, he believed in backup sources of supply. I'm glad he did. And I supported his efforts, and we got our CEO to support us, even though the private equity backers were less than thrilled, because backup source of supply means you need to buy from them. You can't just have one in name. only. So we bought 20% of our non-woven material from the backup source of supply at a higher cost, did not make them happy. However, of course, we did have a problem with our main source of supply, which came from Brazil. And everyone wanted our same backup source of supply, but they supplied us because we've been purchasing from them the whole time. So it's the great story of why you need one, and you should have one. These days, you also need to have a dual source of supply. You need to diversify your supply chain to multiple countries, multiple places. That's why it's not all going to end up in the US, for example. Doesn't make sense. But the US will start producing much more of the equation of goods that are sold in the US, right? So and I believe that we're going to move towards more reshoring in the format that I described, which is really more domestic manufacturing, and a regional supply chain. So there's going to be, Mexico has the ability to scale. They're a strong partner. I'm quite confident we're going to work out the rest of our trade, agreements with them, and they're strong. But I think Latin America has opportunities. So if they wish to take advantage, some countries will take advantage of them, and they'll be, they'll to them it'll be a huge win and volume, because China is just so big that you could take a small amount, it's like a grain of sand from China, and it's huge to some other country like Argentina as an example. We also need to be looking at advanced technologies and predictive type processes. Like Ed and I were saying, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, automation, PSYOP, one of my favorite topics, which is a predictive way to look at your demand and supply so that you can make these types of decisions ahead of time. Because if you wait too long, you are just going to miss the boat. Are going to be ways that you have to address tariffs in a smart way, which is really just a smart way to run your supply chain, regardless of tariffs. Ed, do you have any last minute things to add?
No, I think those are all great takeaways, and I think there will be a lot of opportunities in the future. And I think those people that are willing to look ahead and invest in these kinds of strategies are going to grow the fastest and the best. So I would say you're looking at exactly the right processes to move into the future.
Absolutely. And Ed and I were talking before this webinar, so I would be remiss if I didn't also say, we both believe that the strongest companies are going to value talent. They have to embrace technology, artificial intelligence. However, they should not be, getting rid of a bunch of people because they have artificial intelligence. They should really be for better leveraging, training, developing people. And then those are the companies that utilize both artificial intelligence and upskill and better deploy their people. Those companies will have more opportunities than ever before in history, really. And so we're excited about the future, and folks who are attending this webinar are going to be well positioned to take advantage. So if, thinking about it from a person point of view, you should be looking at continual education. Certainly APICS and ASCM is a great,
Yes.
great method to that, but be continually learning, advancing your knowledge base, and be willing to try new things, and you'll be wildly successful. Were you going to say something, Ed?
There are a lot of opportunities in AI right now, and I think embracing it and finding out how it can work and how it can help you is really a tremendous opportunity as we look to the future.
Absolutely. Well, and thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll be having we'll have another webinar next month, and we also are looking to set up a tour. I think Tony is on top of pursuing a tour in the near future as well. And we'll also get everyone together in person for another event and sometime in the next several months. So we look forward to you continuing to join us. You can keep track of us on our website, and we look forward to seeing you next month. And thank you, Ed, for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you all for attending.
And also, you've been a long-term supporter of ASCM Inland Empire, and we appreciate it. So thank you.
We go back a ways.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you all.